All right, welcome everybody. Good evening to this live stream, Game Analysis live stream. And sorry about the delay, that was not planned, and well, it was not my fault either. The train got 20-minute delayed, and I just got back home. But now we're here. You guys have been waiting, so let's begin right away. And welcome to this Patron Game Analysis live stream, that's how I like to call it. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at games of my supporters from Patreon or people who have sent in games to analyze. And that's what we're about to do. And without further ado, because I see Mario has been waiting already, he's in the chat, and we'll start with his game. So all I need to do, actually, I forgot to do that. I need to load the games real quick, and then we can begin. There we go. All right. Are you guys ready? All right, let's begin. Mario, first game. You're playing with the black pieces, so let me flip the board, and we see your beloved Taimanov Sicilian, or well, kind of through a move transposition here, a little bit of a sideline here. Knight takes c6, takes. This variation is not that critical for black, I believe. Here you go queen c7, which is a logical move, and I think also a move you prefer to play in different situations, but d5 is just strong here, and I think it immediately equalizes for black. And I think that even white has to be precise already, because the main line here for white is to take on d5 and then to play bishop b5 check here, but just bishop d7, and black is so comfortable already here. Nothing to worry about, one more center pawn than white and comfortable position. And if white takes on d5, which also has been played quite a lot, then already here he's worse. If he castles this bishop b7, immediately this is unpleasant to deal with, this checkmate threat. And if bishop e2 to meet queen takes g2, bishop a3, well, black just exchanges queens, and he has a very comfortable endgame due to his extra center pawn here, with which he can control important squares in the center. So I think d5 you might want to check out here, seems to be just equalizing very comfortably for black. Okay, queen c7, bishop e3. Here you go bishop e7. This to me seems a little bit too timid. I would prefer a more direct approach. Once again, either d5 right away, or maybe bishop b4 check, knight c3, now d5. This is not as great as it was a move earlier, but I think this is still pretty decent. Now after e takes d5 you would need to play bishop takes c3, because after c takes d5 there's queen a4 check, but here this also should be just fine for black. Because when we look at how the game developed from now, it seems that you come under a little bit of pressure, and this pressure is due to your lack of space a little bit, I would say. So castle, knight to c3, bishop b7, f4, d6, rook c1. Here I like your move queen a5 to activate the queen. This is all good, but here you just make a choice that leads to an inferior position. You play queen h5. And yeah, the endgame would be quite uncomfortable if your opponent had found the right way. So e5, as you also pointed out, is a better move. And I think this move makes a lot of sense, because there are always these ideas in the air that white might play with e5, maybe play with f5. And with e5 you clarify the situation in the center. That's the move you want to play. You want to gain some more space, take his squares away from the white pieces. And one important point here is that f5, which is the typical response I would say to e5, can be answered with d5. And now all your pieces are placed very well to support this push. Okay, so this looks quite promising. Okay, and I'm just having an eye on the chat as well, Mario. If you want to chime in there with anything, then just you can do so. Okay. Also of the other moves here, I think you gave a line of g3, but g3 already looks awkward to me because it weakens the king and this doesn't look that promising. And you gave a line here, rook a b8, rook fe8. Okay, this looks completely fine for me with black. g3 and h3 look like strange moves. In either case, yes, e5. And I think the cause of the mistake here is that you missed this possibility of e5 here by white. I would say this is what you missed, and you didn't consider that your knight might end up in trouble on h5, or it might be awkward at least to get back into the game. Now white is threatening already to win the knight. Common situation, I'm sure you were familiar with that, but somehow this e5 move, I think, did not cross your mind, and that you might be in some trouble here. So I think this is just about looking for candidate moves of your opponent, taking everything into consideration. Because yes, you're right, if you can get your knight back into f6, it should be okay. Maybe a tiny bit worse, because white has more space and you can still go for maybe c5, maybe e5, maybe f5, has some breaks available, but not much is going on, right? So yes, I would just say a little calculation error here. Rook fd1 was played, now you go e5, which is great, and the next moves I don't really have anything to say. Your opponent is so kind to give his bishop, and here bishop g5 is great to activate your dark squared bishop, which doesn't have a counterpart, and get the bishop to nice squares here. Here you go rook f to d8, which I also think is completely fine, bishop f3, and now you play a5. I think, yeah, all the next moves are also very reasonable. Here you could also go g6, as you pointed out. I think this is an interesting idea also later on, just to have more options to be able, if necessary, to take on f5. And if white takes himself, then it opens another file. Because in general, this will be your problem in the game, to get files for your rooks, to get into the white position, because the position is rather closed right now and you need to be able to activate these rooks sooner or later. Okay, so g6 is also an interesting option, but I also like a5, rook to d3, bishop d4, knight to a4, rook a b8. I also like b3, but now it seems you're a little bit without a clear plan. You go bishop a6, and I'm not sure what the bishop is supposed to do here, really. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's doing anything there. And later on, you also move it back to c8 and to d7. Well, you could have saved yourself a lot of time if you went for this idea immediately. Play c5, go bishop c6, and then you always have this idea to open up files with a4. And yes, you're giving away the square on d5, and yes, white can bring a knight to d5, but let's just give a sample line here, knight c3. He can bring the knight to d5, but you'll just take the knight and you still have some pressure. Of course, it won't be easy to win this position with the opposite colored bishops, but you're the only one pressing, because your bishop is much stronger and will remain much stronger than the light squared bishop of white. So this seems promising. The only question is how much of a threat is to play a4, because then white takes with the knight and you have to carefully evaluate this. So what I looked at here was just improve the position of the king, maybe something like this, bring the king to e7, and at some point you can play a4, and maybe you can prepare with rook b4 and just see what's happening. And if white goes knight d5, then you can just take. And if white takes with the e pawn, you have a protected pass pawn on e5. And if he takes with the c pawn, then once again, maybe play rook b4, maybe a4 immediately. There are chances definitely to do something here. Not winning, of course, but this is a little bit of an advantage for black. So here, after you played a lot of sensible moves, it seems to me that you didn't really know what to do next. Yeah. Okay, let's see how the game developed. Rook to d1. I see what you want to do. You want to go d5, yeah? But this is just, you know, it's just one move creating a threat, and then if your opponent parries it, what next, right? So this doesn't really help you. Those are like cheapos, I would say, which don't really help you. You can go for cheapos, but they should always be embedded in a greater plan, right? Where you actually are doing something. Because here now you put your bishop on a6, but it's just nothing there, I think. Okay, king f8, g4, king to e7, king g2, and now you bring the bishop to c8. But here, in fact, bishop c8 allows white to go c5. And I think even here already you should have played c5 yourself, because white in this position is able to play c5, and that would alleviate some of his pressure, that would help his position. So here it seemed that you were not really too aware of white's options to do something himself. And this is really the only pawn break you need to watch out for in this position. Of course, white could do something with h4 and g5, but it's not very immediate, and it wouldn't change the position, the pawn structure that much right now. So you want to check for c5 and if it's any good, and especially with the bishop dropping back to c8, c5 becomes a very possible option, right? So just playing c5 here, or maybe rook b4, something along these lines, would have been better to not give white this chance. He did not take it though, he played h3 and now bishop d7, and here once again c5 once again was just good. Actually here even better, because you can't even go d5, the pawn would be just hanging. And what do you do now? You don't want to take, but well, if you play bishop e8, the knight comes to c5. Here I think white is just equalized comfortably because your structure has suffered. So you need to look for active moves. I know it has been a lot of maneuvering in the last few moves, but always check for these moves that change the pawn structure. Pawn moves always, you need to be aware of them, and if they are any dangerous to you. Okay, your opponent did not play this, he played knight c3, rook b4. Now you are increasing the pressure here, you found a better setup with the bishop on d7. Now a4 is threatening, rook bishop to d1, a4. a4 is definitely a good move, but I'm wondering if maybe it's about time again to consider g6, to open a second front, because this is also a common concept in endgames, the idea of two weaknesses. So here we could say, well, there's no clear weakness yet on the queen side, but there will be something along with a4, or just this whole setup seems kind of loose with a4 coming and some tactical ideas. But then the question is, well, white is able to defend the queen side, so you need to open up a second front to create another weakness. And a weakness doesn't necessarily have to be a pawn. It can also just be a file where you can invade maybe into the white position. And that file could be, for example, the g file. So g6, or the f file if white takes on g6. So I think g6 is definitely a very interesting move here to consider, because you're not really in that much of a rush to force matters. Let's see the game. a4, rook cc1. And here I think you were too materialistic. I would say you go for the exchange. Yes, it's attractive, winning an exchange, but the position becomes very hard to win afterwards. I think it would have been much more practical to just take on b3. If now white takes with the rook, with the bishop, he will have a terrible pawn structure, obviously, with these pawns isolated, and he has to defend them for the rest of the game. Of course, still not that easy to win, but you can try, you can pressure, you still can play g6, maybe even h5. Well, g6 looks a little bit more sensible, and you will try for a long time. This looks very promising. If he takes with the pawn though, now again you can go for g6. And this is what I was just mentioning, pretty much same situation. Now black has this weakness, he has to defend. He doesn't have great squares for his pieces, and you have the A file open. If necessary, maybe you can use it, but this will also be very uncomfortable for white. And I think practically this is much more difficult to play than the other position, and that's something you want to consider in your games. What is maybe not the best objectively, but what is the most uncomfortable for my opponent to play? And this would be more uncomfortable. And this is a concept in which Magnus Carlsen really excels. He doesn't always play the best moves, but he plays the moves where he thinks this will pose the most problems to my opponent. And this is really what chess is about, to posing practical problems, and then at some point the opponent won't be able to solve them. Of course, most of the time, the best moves lead to the best problems, to the greatest problems. But sometimes it's not necessarily like that. And in this situation, it's not even clear if bishop e3 is objectively a better move. So here you win the exchange, yes, but the position stays closed and you don't have open files for your rooks. And this makes it difficult to convert this extra exchange. Okay, rook to d8. Yeah, I'm not sure where you're going with this. I would rather play the rook to a8. This seems like a useful file here. Knight c3, g6, bishop f3, and then maybe bishop e8. And you can try to get the bishop to play with f6, take on f5 first, bring the bishop to f7. And then you have to see. You have to see what you can do. Maybe at some point a break with d5 would be possible. Maybe using the g file would be possible. It won't be easy to get through. It won't be easy, but this seems to me more sensible than the setup you chose here. So let's see where you're going for. And yeah, this was really a very confusing moment for me. You just played bishop a6, and I thought, okay, he obviously wants to take on c4, right? And then your opponent plays king f2. I'm like, what is going on? White is just ignoring bishop takes c4, and now you don't take. So I was very confused. I don't know if you want to comment on it. Maybe you were already low on time here, but I was very confused because bishop takes c4 just picks up a pawn, and then if you pick up this pawn, you can play d5, and now you pretty much have an easy win. And I don't see any problem, any tactic or any idea that white has here to not play bishop takes c4. So I don't know. If you want to, you can write something about it. All right. And I'm seeing in the chat you had the wrong impression leaving the d5 square without the pawn cover. Oh, you didn't. You're saying you didn't see this idea of playing e5. Ah, you didn't see e5 by white, I'm guessing you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense. And then I'm not quite sure how to read your other comment that you didn't want to leave the d5 square without a pawn cover, but you have the c6 pawn covering and the e6 pawn covering. So I guess I understand now. You didn't want to play c5. Okay, you didn't want to allow this knight to come to d5. Okay, this makes sense. And I need to drink something because I'm getting a little bit dry. All right, let's get back to it. And you're saying, okay, you were short on time, but still, I mean, even if you're short on time, you should see something like this in 5 seconds, or 10 seconds. Maybe this sounds a little bit harsh, but there should be no excuse for not seeing bishop takes c4. So you might want to, do some tactics, because this is where the game is decided, more or less. If you play bishop takes c4, you have an easy win. Pretty much, you should have an easy win. And if you don't go bishop takes c4, if you don't take advantage of these chances when they present themselves on a gift plate, as we would say in German, your opponent is giving you the gift right here, playing king f2, ignoring this, well, then it becomes much more difficult, right, to win this. And as we'll see, you won't be able to in this game. Okay, rook a8, knight c3, rook to d8. Okay, just some back and forth moving. I'm not even sure if white is not playing for one because you're just repeating moves, but he's playing something else. Okay, let's see. King to d1, rook back. So not much is happening here. And now you're taking on f5. I'm wondering if it's maybe a little bit early. You don't need to alleviate the tension already. You could play a move like bishop b7, rook to a8 again, rook to d8, hinting at playing d5, maybe move your king. And black always has to consider that you take on f5. And actually the problem with taking on f5 is here in this position, is that white could take with the e-pawn quite well, open up his bishop, and here would be also very difficult to do something. Actually, your advantage has decreased here, I would say. Yeah, it will. What are you going to do? White keeps all the pressure on d5. You cannot play d5, and yeah, this would have been very tough as well. So I think just a little bit too early here to take on f5. But okay, we have to consider it was a rapid game, and of course you didn't have that much time left. So let's see what is happening here. I would say exchanging a rook is definitely helpful for you. In general, if you're an exchange up in the end game and your opponent still has a rook, you want to trade it because then he has much less counterplay in general. That's a general rule of thumb. So that was good. Still, you cannot get in because white is covering all the entry squares. So let's see how this goes. And here I looked a little bit. You play king e7 now, which of course is possible, but soon the game ends in a draw. So we can see the last few moves here, and you decide to make a draw, which is within reason, of course, here, because yes, it's tough to do something. And I checked a little bit what you could do, but there are some ideas and you should definitely try, because it's for white, you're not risking much unless you really want to. And for white can go wrong, right? For example, here you gave a line if white puts the bishop g6. Doesn't look unreasonable, but now he doesn't have the chance to defend against d5 anymore. And sooner or later you can push d5, and if you can push d5 under good circumstances, you have a very good winning chance, as you show here with this line. Still work to be done, but if the position opens up, your rook becomes strong and white shouldn't be able to defend. So white probably needs to keep passive here. And here I thought, okay, the only idea is to bring the king somehow. I want to get the king coming here, but then could be the problem that sometimes this pawn is a weakness. For example, we could imagine a knight coming to g4, something like this. So we have to be careful. And one line I looked at here, of course with the help of the computer, is to keep the knight bound to this pawn and then put the rook to a3, so that knight a4 is not annoying if king b6, and then bring the king to c5. And here just gets double edged because, okay, white has to do something, otherwise black is too active, and he can go for the f6 pawn. On the other hand, black is also getting this pawn on b3, and still unclear because white has a strong passed pawn, but it looks like black has good chances here. In either case, just what I want to say is that you can try, and white has to be the one who has to be covered. But of course, not an easy position to play with not a lot of time on the clock. Still, just play some moves. I'm not sure which time format it was, if you were getting extra time, if it was with increment or with delay. If it was with delay, then I understand it's very hard because, yes, if you overdo it, you could lose this position as well. So, all right. No, I think the critical moment really here was that you missed this very, very simple tactic with bishop takes c4. And before that, the point I would emphasize is this practical decision. Do I take the exchange? Yes, I'm up material. I probably won't lose. There's a very low risk, but it also makes it very hard to win. Or do I not take the material, just keep the advantages I have in the position, the bishop pair, and this very strong dark squared bishop, which was just dominating the board, and then keep on playing like that. And really you could argue in this position the bishop was stronger than a rook, because the bishop was on d4 controlling the whole board, whereas the rook was just passive. So these are the points I would like to emphasize from this game. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll check the chat once more. And you're saying, yes, that you understand you couldn't improve my position after winning the exchange. At least it's very difficult, right? I could even imagine that objectively the computer might hold it with white already. In a practical game, of course, you have chances, but it's just much more difficult. And like I said, you want to play the moves that pose the most practical problems to your opponent. That's just a key thing to consider, and also something that I didn't always have in my mind. Because you think always, okay, let's play the best moves, let's take the materials, let's take the material if we can. But it's also about to see what will remain in the position and if you can still win, and if it gives you a good chance to win this. All right, let's get to the second game, Mario. Once again, we have a game where we're playing with the black pieces, and once again, you're playing the Sicilian, and I'm a big fan of Sicilian, so not unhappy to see this. And here we have the time off. In fact, one of the main lines here with long castle, very sharp line, and I'm sure you know more about it than I do. I believe white played a little bit of a sideline here, and here you go bishop b7, which is a sideline and a sideline, if I may say so. Seems to be fine. Even better though, I think just equalizing should be knight takes d4 here. And you also posted a game between Fedoseev and Quesada Perez, which was recently played. And yeah, you might look into this a little bit, but as I saw from the computer evaluation, this should be equal. But also bishop b7 should be fine. Even though I saw, okay, white can go something like this, bishop f4, and then win the pawn on d6. But also this should not be too much trouble for black. Okay, I don't think, yeah, you don't need to probably spend that much time on this variation as it's pretty rare. But in general, you should be knowledgeable of the theory in this line, because I think there are a lot of sharp lines and you need to know your way around, as usually in the Taimanov. I think there are a lot of dangerous lines in the Taimanov, against the Taimanov. So good theory knowledge is very helpful. Okay, let's see what your opponent does. He plays very slowly, and that's just very risky in this kind of Sicilian. And here you could have already seized the initiative. Seized the initiative, I think. That's how it's pronounced. By, well, various ways, in fact. You're saying b4. When playing the Sicilian, you have to play energetically. Yes, I agree. You played h6, and this is indeed, yeah, I mean, it looks very reasonable and it's fine, but you had better moves, right? So one way is to play b4, like you said here, and knight e5, and this just looks attractive, playing knight c4. Sacrificing ideas always in the air here, and now you can go h6, and white is already tied up, and you can follow with d5. Oh, this is gorgeous. I would love to play this position with black for sure. But you also had a more direct approach, was to take on d4, and here to go either e5. This is what you pointed out, also looks interesting, but to play b4 right away is also very nice. Because if white plays knight e2, then you already have the sacrifice available. Because here this double attack is just crushing white on the spot, winning for black. So actually after b4, here white has to play g5. And then we get this position. Here black should give the piece right back. Knight takes e4, but you also win a pawn here. And it also looks good. Even though now that I'm looking at it, I mean, just optically, I like the other one better, I think. Where you just go b4 and then play knight e5 here. Just looks very nice, right? And I mean, b4 is always a move you want to consider. Okay, so h6, knight takes c6, queen takes, And now your opponent made a mistake, you played e5, and you played correctly here, b4, and you end up just a pawn up, right, in this position. And this is what I would say a critical position. Because, okay, so far the last few moves were pretty straightforward, right? You won a pawn, but now the question is how to continue. And if you find the right way here, it will mean a lot for the rest of the game. So this is why it's a critical position, because if you play the correct move here, you will end up in a very good position with great winning chances. And it's important to identify these critical positions in your own games and to know, okay, I need to spend more time here. I need to spend more time because I'm feeling it will be important if I find the right continuation. And here, in fact, you have several good continuations, but the one you chose is making it more difficult for you. You play bishop d5. Okay, I'll tell you the one, okay. There are two very attractive ones. The first one you also pointed out is rook takes c2, giving the exchange, but winning another pawn and forcing a queen trade as well, because king b1, well, king b1 I guess would be possible, but you're going to pick up another pawn, and then you have 3 pawns, your king will be safe. It's just hopeless for white. So queen d2 takes, king takes. But yeah, this position is also just so horrible for white in every way. You have 2 pawns for the exchange. He has more weaknesses. You have the bishops. This will be very tough for white to play. Great winning chance, of course. But to me, I'm not a big fan of giving the exchange like that if I don't need to. I mean, it looks nice, yes. But to me, I would just play queen d5. This looks very, very simple because you're forcing a queen trade pretty much, and you'll just enter an endgame a pawn up. Yeah, if you place king b1, you just go a5. White cannot avoid the queen trade, otherwise he'll lose the second pawn. And after takes, okay, bishop takes a6, there's rook a8, rook takes a2, doesn't help white. And otherwise, well, you're just a pawn up. So you have very great chances to convert here. You can go a5. I mean, this will be very tough for black because for white, because he still has weaknesses over here. He doesn't really have counterplay. Yeah, this would have been very safe way to play. And not sure if you saw queen d5, you can let us know in the chat, or if there was something you didn't like, but I would guess that you didn't consider it maybe, because if you consider it and look at it a little bit, then I think you'll probably agree that this is just a safe option. And in this position, what you want to do is you want to trade queens, because if you trade queens, where's the white compensation at all, right? And with bishop d5, you're allowing him to get something going. Bishop to g2, queen takes e5, bishop takes d5. And even if you, well, I'm guessing that you had to see this coming, more or less. Bishop g2 was very logical, all of that. And that you maybe were happy with the position here. But if I look at this position, I wouldn't be very happy, because you have now isolated pawns here. You're right now 2 pawns up, but of course you lose at least this one. And somehow the position opened up, but not in your favor. Your king is still on e8, so I would not like this at all. We have to add that you had a great chance here to keep an advantage with bishop f6. Very nice intermediate move, and this reminds us we always need to keep our eyes open if there are any intermediate moves like this one that we didn't consider maybe. Okay, so very nice move here, bishop f6, threatening mate, and after bishop d4, now queen takes d5, and you would get this endgame where you're 2 pawns up right now. Now it's just 1 pawn, but you have good chances here in the rook endgame. Of course, still complicated, but I would say good chances. Okay, so You're saying, I didn't see queen d5, I was in the attack mood, and I didn't see the intermediate bishop f6 move. Yeah, I mean, in chess, that's really what it's all about. It's not so much about calculating 5 moves in advance. It's more about seeing the right moves in the first or second or third move. That's what it's about. Seeing the moves. It's really just seeing the moves. But it's tough. It's tough for everybody. It's tough for me as well. It's tough for top level grandmasters. Sometimes they just don't see the move. If it only crossed their mind or your mind for a second that this move exists, you would look at it and you would very quickly come to a conclusion. Oh, this is interesting. You take a further look and there you go. Then you decide to play it. It's as simple as that, right? So what helps with that is, I think, studies or these mate in 2, mate in 3 compositions, right? Compositions. Not from actual games, but compositions where it's usually a hidden move. It's a difficult move to find. And this really prompts your mind to look for all kinds of moves and to go into maybe weird directions as well. Look for weird moves as well. And because this is what you have to do to solve these studies, to solve these two mate in 2 or mate in 3 exercises. And then what happens during the games, you also look for all kinds of moves. You don't only look for the logical moves, but you look for all kinds of moves, right? And then you also think about moves like bishop f6, which of course is a move difficult to find, but yeah, like I said, always have to keep the mind open, pretty much. That's the trick. Okay, let's keep on going. Here you play queen takes f4. Which is a mistake. You should just play queen f6. And why not, right? I mean, white cannot take, obviously. And if rook f2, castle, here's the line you're giving. Why not keep the queens on the board like that? Can bring the rook into the game. And white cannot really take on d7 because of rook d8. And you activate your rook. Okay, I mean, it doesn't look that clear, but it seems that, well, for one, you still have an extra pawn. And for the other, you can also put some pressure on this pawn on c2. So this looks very nice for black, and you are pawn up after all. That's just something which slipped my mind for a moment, that you're pawn up still, and this gives you good chances. The problems with this endgame that you're going for is that it's a rook endgame and your rooks are still pretty passive. So in fact here, right now, white is even better. He messes up a little bit later, but he's even better. And yeah, that's of course an unfortunate transformation of the position, right? So I think you just misevaluated either this endgame, thinking, okay, I'm right now 2 pawns up, should be good, or somehow you didn't like queen f6. Not sure. Only you know, really. Only you know. Okay. Let's see how this goes. Takes f6, rook ed2, rook c7, rook d6, rook a7. Yeah, just a small thing here, rook a7. I like a5 much better. I mean, rook a7 also looks so passive. And after that, white could have gotten an advantage with rook b6. But if you play a5, now if white goes after a pawn, rook a6, you can activate your rook, play rook e4. And this is nice. White should be able to hold the balance, for example, b3, and then play h6. But it's always white who's fighting for the draw here. Even here, you're still pawn up. White should be able to make a draw with his 2 rooks, getting enough play against the king. But it's white who has to make the draw here for sure. Okay, so yeah, I think this has a little bit to do with calculation, but also like feeling. I mean, rook a7, not a move you want to play, really, right? It looks odd, at least to me. Okay, rook a7, rook to d4, a5 now, okay. So this is all good, this is all good. you keep on fighting here. I like that, even though here I thought, okay, you could also just play king e6 because then white cannot repeat moves, but doesn't make that much of a difference. And now what happens is that you lose on time, and that's of course very unfortunate to lose position on time, because of course you're not worse, and yeah, this should not happen. Actually, right now I forgot, maybe this was the rapid game and the other one was the long game. Yeah, I think the other one was the long game, because I remember your comment, you said you still had 7 minutes on the clock when you accepted the draw in the other one. So this is the rapid game. Okay, so I don't know which time control you played, but I'm guessing there was some kind of increment, delay, something that would give you more time. Yeah, losing on time. Okay, it happens every once in a while. Only you know what exactly happened there, why you lost on time. But of course, that's yeah, an unnecessary loss, obviously. And in this position, actually, you have a chance again to go for an advantage with rook c7. And you had the right idea here, I would say, with rook e5 to trade rooks. But rook c7, this would be a better way to do it. If white now goes rook c5, you take and go rook e2 here. And after rook c4, you can get this pawn going, and this g pawn will really cause white some trouble. If takes here, for example, you could also go rook e5, rook takes f5, and the g pawn, he has to watch this pawn very closely, and this gives you great chances. So probably white should go king b3 here, and now rook e3 check, king e4, rook takes c2. Of course, it's tricky to do this because first it looks like white can achieve a perpetual here, but it turns out that you can go to f7, and then you can bring the rook in between, and you have good winning chance, I think, once again. So rook c7 was the way to do it, but yeah, unfortunately you lost on time. I'm not sure why exactly that happened here, only you know that, of course. 30-minute game with delay 5 seconds. Yeah, delay 5 seconds is really not much for everybody who doesn't know what delay is. Delay is a format that's used mostly in the US, and it means you play a move, then 5 seconds pass, and then only then your opponent's time runs. And same if your opponent makes a move, then 5 seconds pass, and only then your clock starts ticking. And that means you cannot gain time. With increment, if you play a few moves quickly, you can gain some time, but with delay, if you're down to 1 second, all you have every time is these 5 seconds really. And if you cross it, you lose. So that's tough. Okay. All right, so what can we say about this game? Well, the opening went pretty well for you. And then I would say it was really about this moment when you play bishop d5. I think from then on, of course, you had 2 more chances, bishop f6 and then queen f6. But I think this is the moment where it kind of went a little bit bad. If you find the right choice there, either rook takes c2 or queen d5, I think matter of taste, then you have very good chances to win, right? And of course there were some other things here as well going into this endgame. Also, just seemed like a misevaluation. We have to take into consideration it was a rapid game. Quality of play, of course, is lower than in a longer game. Still, seemed like there was not the right kind of exchange in this moment. Okay. All right, but great instructive games, I think. A lot to take from them, also quite different games this time. And well, Mario, let me know if you have any questions, if there was anything unclear. Like I said, I would recommend to solve more of these studies, of these mate in 2, mate in 3. Really, to everybody, this is just very useful to get your mind looking for these candidate moves. Also, what I do sometimes is I just ask myself, am I missing something here? What am I missing here? To ask yourself, am I missing something? It's too easy for your mind to just say, no, you're not missing anything, right? So ask yourself, what am I missing? What am I missing here? Am I missing it? What kind of move am I missing, either for myself or for my opponent? And then your brain will try to find an answer. Okay, maybe you're not missing anything, but in most cases, probably you do, right? And especially in a situation with many attractive moves, you want to make sure you see them all. You see them all, you at least think about them for a moment. And that's, like I said, that can really make the difference, because when you just spot the moves, then that's the first step. It's just the first step. If you don't see the move, then what can you do, right? Okay, I'll drink something, then we get to the next game. And all right, let me just check the chat once more. Tara K says, thanks Nicholas, great analysis, nice button on shirt, thank you. Yes, I like how the shirt matches with the design of the layout here. And thanks to Mario, who says very instructive comments on both games. Thank you, glad to help here. Okay, are you guys ready? Next game, and we have the game by Xavier. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. You were playing with the black pieces. And the first game I'm analyzing of you today. So let's see what happens here. It is the Queen's Indian, and we have this line, Bishop B4, very solid line for black. Not too exciting, but solid. Here, the absolute main choice to go D6, just to point this out for you. Knight C3, Knight E4, takes, we take another pair of pieces off the board, and I think black's pretty close to equality. White is maybe a tiny bit better, but okay, not much is going on here, obviously. C5, maybe a bit more risky, but also possible. Gerakamsky played this move as well. I'm not really sure. I don't like this move that much, I have to say. I think D6 is more solid. You might want to look into it. But okay, it seems also there's not much wrong here. Now D5. Now your opponent took on C5. I think if he takes on D5 and now plays Rook FD1, he can put the other Rook on C1, and he can take on C5 if he wants to play against the hanging pawns. I think it's just a bit more comfortable to play for white. I would prefer white here. But he takes like this, Rook FD1, and here you said you were surprised that he allowed you to gain space. And that's what you did, right? D4 looks attractive, but it's a mistake. You should just develop like Knight BD7, normal position, maybe a tiny bit better for white, but not much going on. What's wrong with D4? Well, first it looks nice, right? You're attacking the knight, but the problem is, you might notice, you're not attacking the knight, because if you were to move, you couldn't take, you would lose the game pretty much, because white takes on D8 and you can't even take back because of back rank checkmate. So this is a problem. So then suddenly you might realize, okay, well, white doesn't have to move the knight, which he did in the game. What else can he do? And he can use this pin. He can play E3 and suddenly you're losing a pawn. You cannot defend the pawn on D4. And your position becomes pretty much lost right here. Because this is an important pawn in the center, right? The center pawns are the most important pawns. And now if he just takes this pawn, trades all the pieces, he ends up with a pawn majority 3 against 1 on the queen side, and just pretty much winning position here. You don't have any compensation. So tactics, once again, as we also saw in the previous games, is just everything. You know, one move here, D4, you're like enthusiastic, you think, okay, I can go for it. And then if your opponent plays the right move here, you're with the back to the wall, and you might lose this game without having any chance because you just played one bad move. And this is also a discussion I had recently with a friend of mine. Chess is brutal. Chess is brutal because one move can mess up everything immediately. You can play a great game and then you make one bad move and you mess up. So you need to stay on top, you need to be focused and always check for tactics. It's a foundation. That's what I always like to say. It is a foundation. Without tactical vision, having an eye for these small things, small details, you cannot really get that far in chess. Your opponent missed, he played knight a4. Now you go knight a6. Interesting move. I'm guessing that you didn't want to allow b4. But here, knight bd7 would have been better. You can allow b4. The point is here that after queen c7, now let's say b takes c5, or knight takes c5, doesn't matter that much. Here you don't take back, but you can stabilize with e5, stabilize the pawn, and you will win back this pawn sooner or later. And then you have a nice pawn structure here, and white has another weakness on c4. So this would be quite nice for you. Just as an idea to point out, typical idea to not take back the pawn c5 immediately, but to play e5 first. Okay, so this was also possible. Knight a6 is of course as well possible, but the problem is with the knight on a6, okay, it's also a little bit awkwardly placed, right? So is the pawn in the knight on a6, sure, but you're not supporting e5. The knight on d7 you would also support e5, and that's a move you want to play here. You want to play e5, that would be nice. Okay, b3, bishop c6, knight b2, and here you said you also consider queen c7. Knight e4 is logical and good. Nothing wrong with this. This is logical, but what is not logical here is not to play knight c3. This would be a move just play instantly, right? You bring the knight to c3, protected on c3. It's an outpost. No pawn can attack this knight anymore, since this pawn is already moved, this pawn is already moved. And you bring it there with tempo, attacking pawn and rook. This is an automatic move, pretty much, right? Jakob Aagaard would call this a simple decision. Simple decision. Bring the knight from a square where it's a little bit unstable because there are tactics like knight takes d4, knight e5, and so on. Bring it to a square where it's protected and attacking something. Great, okay? And here after rook d2, now it would be time to move the queen. It's a question maybe to b6 to have some more support here on the pawn, or which I kind of like better, to play queen a5, to have some ideas here with tactics along this diagonal. And I think you're doing very well here. You're saying here, you play rook c8. You play this move to defend the bishop on c6 so that you can play g5. And a lot is going on here, okay? A lot is going on here. Why do you want to play g5 so badly? g5 is an option, yes, but if it doesn't win the game, it also has drawbacks, because you will long-term weaken your king. In general, you want to be very careful with pawn moves in front of your king, especially pawn moves 2 steps forward, like g5, f5, h5. All these moves weaken your king. h5 the least, but g5 really opens up your king. And the move needs to have great benefits to play it. Otherwise, leave it alone. G5 is not what you're aiming for here. If you want to play a pawn move, you want to achieve e5 somehow, maybe f6, e5. But first of all, you need to address something here. You're only looking at your own plan. You're only looking at your own moves. You need to look for your opponent moves. You need to see, what is my opponent going to do next? And here, he has a threat. He has a threat to take on d4, just win a pawn, because the knight on e4 will be attacked. So what I would recommend you to do for the future is to periodically, or if you want to, after every move your opponent plays, ask yourself, what would my opponent do if he was to move again? What is his threat? What if it was his move again? What would he do? And this will allow you to see moves like knight takes d4 maybe, or to go in that direction. Because again, tactics, right? I mean, rook c8, if you take some d4, he just wins a pawn, and you're with the back against the wall. Knight c3 does not work. I'm not sure if this was your intention. You didn't say anything about it, but I'm guessing it was not your intention. Just to show this line real quick, massive exchanges, but what happens here, now the material is equal, but your knight is trapped on g2. White can just go rook d1 and you lose the knight and lose the game. So after knight takes d4 you need to take, and then bishop takes e4, and white has just won a pawn and he has great winning chances here, of course. So look out for your opponent plans, opponent threats, and especially tactics like this, right? Okay, rook ac1, your opponent missed it as well. And here, well, the threat is still there, right? So you would need to address it. Either play f5 to support the knight. Don't like this move that much because it gives the e5 square away. I like the move queen f6 here. Just trading the queen. So queen is well placed. Your queen hasn't moved. You want to bring the rook to d8. Seems like a natural square here. And this looks pretty fine. If white takes, then I think you can take very well with the g-pawn here. Take control of the e5 square, bring the knight to c3 if needed, and you have more space. You have some ideas here, right? The knight is still awkward, but maybe you can play to b4, play a5, a4, something along these lines. Looks fine. Also, you can take with the knight. This also is decent, of course, if you don't want to weaken your pawn structure a little bit. Both are fine, for sure. You play g5. I mean, this was your plan, so that makes sense. But here, you thought you can win his queen. You play queen e7, and you thought it's winning, but it's actually losing. Because once again, this knight takes d4 tactic, which it seems to me just didn't cross your mind at all. And after that, it's just lost, right? We can go through this pretty quickly because you don't get another chance here. You try to steer it up here, but only helps white to open the g file, and then it's game over here. So here really, now that you gave your opponent a third chance for a simple tactic, he took it, right? He took it, and actually in this case there was really no coming back, because you also weakened your king position with g5. Otherwise maybe there would have been still more of a chance, but with this pawn on g5 as well, this is just another drawback in your position. It's just too much. So instead here you had two choices. The simple one would be to go queen c7, offering a queen trade would be about equal. Also interesting is to play f6 and then to play king g7. And here the point is that white cannot play this tactic now, since after bishop takes e4 there's rook e8 and you win the piece on e4. So white would probably need to play something else like e3 here, rook e8, and you still have this idea to go after the queen, and it's a messy position. Who knows what's going on? It's pretty unclear. I think queen c7 would be just very sensible to trade queens and then go from there. But yeah, tactics, man. I mean, for you, I think in general, your general game plan, what I saw strategically, was good. I think a lot of moves were logical, but then you went astray. This plan of g5 was not warranted in the position, just the wrong plan, I think. Sure, if it wins the queen, great, but if it doesn't, it just weakens your king. And then it's the tactics. 3 times your opponent had the chance to win a pawn, and the third time he used it. And if you need to see those things. That will really elevate your game to the next level. So for you, it's really doing tactic exercise, and I don't care how you do it. You can do it on the internet, with a tactics trainer. You can do it with a chess book. You can do it on an app, on the phone. Really, it doesn't matter that much, whatever suits your needs, but do some every day. However much time you want to commit, 50 minutes, half an hour, maybe when you commute, you can do it on the phone. Whatever you want, really. But this will definitely help you so much, I'm sure. Because strategically, from what I saw from this game, there's a sound foundation already. You're not playing complete nonsense moves. You're playing sensible moves most of the time here. So yes, this would be my feedback. I'll check in the chat if you are actually watching. Doesn't seem like it. So let me know afterwards if you have any questions. Just write me an email, and thanks for sending in the game. Okay, I'll drink another sip and we'll get to the game number 4. All right, game number 4, we have King Hunter. He's back and he's playing with the black pieces in this game. So let's see your game, King Hunter, here. What is happening? Okay, this opening looks familiar to me, and here you play knight c6. I want to give you a tip. I actually talk about this in my video series on chess 24. Whole repertoire against knight f3 and c4, and this is the move I recommend. Why? If white now plays like he did in the game with d4, now you can take and play e5, and the difference is white cannot trade the knights on c6, and he has to lose another move, like play knight b3, and then you can play bishop e7 or bishop e6, and you're gonna be fine here. Really, white doesn't have anything here. You can look at some lines, but really white doesn't have anything here. So this is very comfortable. So I think e6 is a smart way to play this position. Knight c6 is fine, but to me these positions are a bit tricky because now we have a green felt reversed. White has an extra tempo and he has some pressure here, as you also noticed in the game, I'm sure. Here you play queen d7, which is possible. Main line is rook c8. But yeah, you're just fighting for a draw here. White wins a pawn like this, and you have to fight for a draw. Probably you can get it because you're active enough here, but this is no fun, right? I mean, out of the opening, getting straight into an endgame where you have to defend for the rest of the game to get a draw. Not my cup of tea for sure, and probably not yours either. So openings are important, and you need to know what you're doing there to not get into worse position early on. So queen d7 is what you played. Queen a4, here you should just transpose with rook c8. This would be your best shot, but you went h6. Your opponent didn't really capitalize on this, and it turns out you get into an endgame where you are okay, more than okay actually. Here c3, fine. Bishop c5 I wasn't really sure about. I wouldn't necessarily put the bishop on c5, just doesn't feel right, because you need to use the c file later on. It's the only open file in the position, so you want to use this later on. So bishop b4 seems a little bit more logical for me. Also winning a tempo on the knight, and then castle d4, and okay. I think position is about balance. You have the nice center, but white also has this trump, so you can maybe go rook c1 right now, occupy c file. Interesting position. I would prefer black a little bit maybe because of the more space, but yeah, about balance. Bishop c5, h3. So let's see this one. I think here you play sensible moves. I like all of this, what you're doing here. All of this is great stuff. But here, critical moment, important moment. Okay. Look, you have an active rook, great rook on c2. Your opponent's rook is passive. It's on d2, it's not in the open file, it's just defending. So don't trade this rook. It's not a good trade. You're trading a good rook against a bad rook. Just get back, drop back to c7. Okay, you control the c file, and also it gives you more chances. If you trade rooks, you have much less potential to win this game. The pawns are equal, and with only minor pieces, there's just not that much going on. After trading rooks, the position becomes completely equal. It's a different story that you still get a winning position in. But here, there's much more potential, much more chances for your opponent to go wrong, right? So this looks attractive. If rook d1, that's what I'm thinking right now, to play rook to c1. Okay, here just for fun, you could repeat moves once to show your opponent who's boss. Always a good psychological technique. But then, of course, you would want to play on. And one move I'm looking at here is bishop f5, with the idea of the rook c1, that you can just take and win a piece. So bishop f5 would be a prophylactic move here to not allow rook c1. And if you place knight d2, then again you can think about rook c2, right? And you have options here. there are things to consider. Knight c4, now bishop c7 maybe. The rook is unpleasant on c2 for your opponent for sure. Okay, so just for you to consider some things here. I'm not sure, maybe even play more active bishop b4, but those are details. I mean, the main point I want to make here is don't trade your good active piece against a passive piece. That's all. Okay, and also in an endgame where there's not that much potential left to do something, be careful of every piece trade, especially rooks. Okay, takes, and now this all is very logical. You have a little bit of something here because you have a better pawn structure, but shouldn't be enough. But the opponent goes astray and you win a pawn. Nicely done. And now suddenly, of course, you have good winning chances. Here though, what you do is possible, but why? There's no need, right? You play f5, e4 now. Bring the king first, bring the king. It's about time to bring the king. Okay, you want a pawn? Now get the king closer. King f7, king e6. You can make pawn moves later on. I wouldn't be afraid of e4, g4, any of that stuff. You are having enough potential in this position to win this position. There are enough pawns left on the board and no rush. Bring your king first. Why not? Because what happens in the game actually, suddenly you will have difficulties to get the king into the game. You play f5, king e2, again, king f7. Okay, bring the king. e4, and now your opponent goes g4, takes, bishop e6. Okay, we have a trade here, which I think is favorable for you because you have to connect the pass pawns here. Very nice. g5. Okay, you can play that. Again, could also consider bringing the king, but here bishop d5 would be a little bit awkward to me. So g5, okay, check. And here's what I'm saying, right? If your king was a little bit more active already, you wouldn't be like locked in right now. But okay, this is the situation now. And I think your position is about winning. But now you make some unfortunate moves. Unfortunately, you just help your opponent here. You just help your opponent with the next move. What you would need to do is play a5. I mean, your only problem here is your king. If you can get your king going and then can especially get these pawns going, you're gonna win, right? So first to play a5. So this is your only weakness in the position, this pawn. If your opponent can get to this pawn or annoy you by attacking it, then you might have some problems converting. But if you play a5, now bishop f5, bishop d6, now you go for this pawn. And if white trades the pawns, I think this position is just lost. You bring the king and you push the pawns. No, this should be lost for sure. But if white goes a4, here you can just go bishop e7 and then bishop d8, you defend the pawn like this. And here the bishop is perfectly placed because now you can push the pawns, right? You can push, can maybe bring the king if necessary, and the pawns supported by the bishops, yeah, should be winning here. So you play bishop to d6, a4 and bishop d1. Here again, same idea, tap, 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 okay? Same idea, so again, valid. But you're helping your opponent, you're just attacking the pawn. And to me, there doesn't seem to be any upside, and there is probably none. This just seemed to be born out of a little bit of not having a plan, maybe cluelessness. I'll just attack the pawn, push the pawn forward, and then we'll see, right? But it's not helping. And here you play a6, after which you're not winning anymore. But already it's tricky because the problem is here that here you would need to get to whatever, right? To the 9th rank, to c9 to defend the pawn, but you can't. This is why you had to play a5 earlier, so you could keep the bishop and defend the pawn. Here you cannot defend it. That's why it wasn't a good idea to push the pawn forward. I think you still have chances, but this position will be tough to win because the bishop is so well placed here, locking the king in and also stopping any action here. I mean, you can try, but yeah, won't be easy. Maybe you can get something going, but tough. Earlier it was much easier to win before you allowed white to push the pawn to a5, and after a6 there's nothing you can do. Actually, you even have to be a little bit careful here that the white a pawn doesn't get too close, but yeah, turned out okay. It's a draw, and here you agreed to a draw. Unfortunate. But I think still this was a nicely played game. You had some problems in the opening, got under some pressure, but your opponent didn't exploit it. And then you kept on playing, kept on trying. First got an advantage with the rooks on, then gave it away. Got the advantage again with the extra pawn. And then just some details were missing there. Just some details and you would win this game, right? Some more precision around here to not allow this a5, a4, a5, push a5 yourself, and you would win this game. So you were close, and I think this was a decent game for sure. Okay, so what do I want you to take away? Well, for one, this exchange thing with the rooks. Don't exchange an active piece against a passive piece unless there's some other upside to it. Check your openings a little bit. This would be also a thing. And also, yeah, this endgame. Especially if there are not a lot of pawns left, like in this situation, you need to keep every single pawn. And yeah. And yeah, with the king, also bring the king. Bringing the king first before you play any pawn moves is, in most cases, the best solution. Okay? All right. I know you can't watch right now, so I won't check the comments that much. But thanks for sending in the game, and I'll get to the second one of you in a moment. Okay, one more sip and one more game. All right, game number 5 of today's Patron coaching live stream. Everybody, King Hunter with the white pieces, and let's see this opening. It's a Catalan, I think, c5. Okay, all right. Sideline here. Already your opponent is in some trouble because he early committed to playing the knight to d7, which you could have exploited here by taking on d5. Knight takes and queen to takes d4, and now we see knight would love to come to c6, but cannot, and the queen is very strong on d4. Bishop c5 could be answered by queen takes g7. So this would give you a nice position already, because queen center on d4, which cannot be pushed away. Very nice. Okay, but also knight takes d4 is nice. e5, knight f3. Here knight b5 was another good option as well. Just something else to consider, bring the knight back to a3. And really black is struggling here because his center is under fire and he is behind in development. So you are having good chances here. d4, e3, just opened up when the opponent's king is still in the center. Use the d5 square, put pressure on the e file, and the knight on d7 is also just misplaced here. So the opening has gone quite well for you. Also after knight f3, I think you're doing well. Now you gave a pawn here, but you have the development, so this is completely fine. And here you go rook d1, and maybe you're missing your opponent's threat a little bit, that he wants to go rook b8 followed by b5. He cannot go b5 right away because of knight takes. Of course you saw that, but you need to address this threat, and this has to do with prophylactic thinking, right? What does my opponent want to do next? What is his threat? And if you see that, you might get to a conclusion that rook d1 might be a little bit slow. Bishop g5 was more to the point here. And now with rook b8, you can just take on f6. This is also the threat, right? Take on f6, get the knight to d5, knight takes f6 is in the air. This is pretty decent. For example, queen c6, queen a5. This, now trade, play knight d5 back. And black is in an awkward situation here. You have the advantage. So bishop g5 to have this idea taking on knight d5, which will not be easy to defend for black, and also develops the last minor piece, opens up maybe the rook coming to c1. This all makes sense. I think here already you could say it's somewhat of a critical position because you sacrifice a pawn and you know time is money here. You need to do something fast because if black gets some moves in, if he consolidates, he'll be a pawn up and you're with the back to the wall, as it happened in this game. So this is critical. Play the right moves here and you'll do well. If you don't, you might end up in trouble. So in these situations, especially if you sacrifice a pawn like this, take your time to find the right way to do it. Okay, rook d1 makes sense, right? But it's not threatening too much. b5, rook b8, excuse me. And here you go wrong. Actually, there was an interesting choice. Now you go bishop g5, but it's one move too late, unfortunately. Knight takes e5 was very interesting. But tough move to play. And yeah, if you play bishop g5, one move earlier, you would not need to spend time with such complications. Point is queen takes e5, bishop f4, going after the rook. Even though also this is quite unclear after b5, and here now queen c7, very interesting move, but the bishops are shining here and black is stuck in the center. This looks promising. b5 is the more critical move, and here beautiful lines, knight takes d7. And black doesn't really have a good way to take back. If it takes with the bishop, it's queen takes a6. Takes with the knight, you can just come back to c2, knight d5 in the air. But what if he takes the queen? Well, this is a queen sacrifice, but great compensation here with the bishops. And black would probably be advised to either give the queen back here or a little bit later, right here, he has to give the queen back when the position is maybe a bit better for you, but close to equal and very complex, obviously. Knight takes e5 is a candidate move. Not an easy move to see, but you always, especially in situations where you're up in the lead of development, if you're having an initiative, you want to look for such sacrifices, just look for them. But okay, to sacrifice a queen like that, not an easy thing to do, right? This is why the more critical moment was one move earlier. Also here it's critical, because of the bishop g5, you end up in a worse position. Black plays b5, gets a harmonious pawn structure, and it's about to consolidate. And now it's really, you need to do something, because otherwise you'll just be a pawn down. And this actually reminds me of a game we analyzed in another live stream where you also gave the c4 pawn, didn't get it back for the rest of the game, and lost without a chance. And this is pretty much what we're seeing here as well. This is, yeah, unfortunate, not necessary. Here you still have chances. You could go knight to d2 and then bring the knight to e4 and have some chance attached to getting knight to d5 maybe. The knight is pinned right now because bishop takes e7. And again, what I also said in previous games, today pose problems, always pose problems. That's the key in chess. Pose as many problems as possible, no matter if you're winning, losing. Whenever you pose problems to your opponents, there are the chances for your opponents to go wrong, and they will do so sooner or later. That's just the nature of the game. We all make mistakes, and we make, well, more mistakes if there are problems to be solved. Here, you had another chance to go knight d2. You play knight d5, which looks good at first, but then, as we'll see, it doesn't really do much for your position. Knight d2, and again, you have compensation, and it won't be easy for black to win this. He's a pawn up, but now it's also opposite colored bishops, and won't be easy to convert. You can definitely pose a lot of problems, and that's your task here, being a pawn down. After knight d5, yes, the rook looks active, looks nice, attacking the pawn, but black just goes bishop f6, and he will develop the bishop to e6 with tempo. So here it seems to me you didn't look far ahead. You just saw, okay, active rook on d5, attacking a pawn, but then where's the follow-up, right? Where's the follow-up? And it also only is helping black in this case. So yeah, that's just a little bit about calculation, seeing a little bit ahead. b3, bishop e6, rook back, castle, knight d2, rook f d8. Now you play knight d2 after all, a little bit too late, unfortunately. and here you had one more chance. You had one more chance, but here it's already very, very difficult to get back into the game, as we'll see. Earlier it was easier. Here you have to really find only moves to stay into the game. It's tough. It's better if it doesn't get to this place, but you could have done this. Knight takes c4, which is fantastic in a way that this works. The point is that, yes, black can win a piece, but he just cannot get out of the pin. Queen c2, and he cannot get out of this pin, and you can play queen e4 here, and then e3 followed by bishop f1, win back the piece, and it's completely equal. It's a very nice line. Of course, there's some other lines. Black doesn't have to go for this. He can also play rook bc8. Actually, now achieve the same position, even in tempo up, and still, it's not winning if he takes, because he can play queen a4. It just doesn't get out of the pin. Bishop g5, but here again, still only moves. e3 loses because of takes, and queen to b6. Queen to d3, winning the rook. But rook c2, followed by bishop e4, bishop d3, and again winning back the piece and being all right. It's fantastic. Probably black's best tries to go queen c5, but now you also go e3, play bishop f1, and you're in the game, right? You're still worse, of course, will be uncomfortable against the bishops, but you're in the game, you're fighting, you won back the pawn, and you're fighting. And that's all that matters, right? Still posing problems. So tough line to spot, a lot about calculation and not stopping too early. I think most people would stop here thinking, okay, he'll support the bishop with rook c8, I'm down a piece, this is lost. But then to look further and see, okay, cannot get off the pin. But this is tough stuff, right? Even for grandmasters, this would not be easy to see. So best to not get into the situation in the first place. After knight e4, nothing to be done. Nothing to be done. Here I thought, okay, knight c3, probably best try. Defend the pawn, maybe get something to d5. But if he plays rook d8, honestly, no, there's really shouldn't be any chance. Pawn down against bishop pair, it's also a potential passed pawn, just no chance. So here, 2 pawns down, it's too much. Even if you're able to split the bishop pair, there was no chance and you had to resign right here. Unfortunate, because it started out so well. Nice opening play here, put on pressure, sacrifice the pawn. You had a good feeling for it that this would give you compensation. That was true, but you didn't have the right follow-up. In the critical moments, you played the wrong moves, right? So if we go back here, first not playing bishop g5 and then not sacrificing in this position on e5. So these are just the critical moments, and since you missed it here, then you had to defend, you had to struggle for the rest of the game, and then it was tough. Then it's tough, and then it can go bad, of course, right? So this would be my analysis for this game, okay? And I hope this was helpful. I hope this was valuable, not only for you, but also for everybody else watching. Hope you guys can all take away something here. King Hunter, if you have any questions, as always, let me know. But I think you're improving. I'm seeing it in your games, and you also told me yourself, you feel it, that you're going forward. But of course, there's so much to learn chess, and we all still always make mistakes, even the best of the best. Just make a little bit less mistakes, that's all. But yeah, it's just a very complex game, difficult game to master. And I hope that with this game analysis, I can provide some guidance on your path to improving. And to everybody else on this channel, that's why we're here, right? So this was my live stream, Patron coaching. Hope you guys enjoyed it and took away something here. I'm getting a little bit sore with the voice after talking for 1.5 hours straight. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to subscribe. And then I'll see you guys again very soon on this channel. Bye bye, guys.